Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello, hello.
So I'll throw this in here as a little like a report from the front lines in a different angle. So I was just on a call with a colleague at Hannah Grimes, who is pregnant, expecting her first child. And we were lamenting that I'm going to do some coverage for her while she's out on maternity leave. And we were trying to decide how long her maternity leave was actually going to go, because she is already trying to find a place for her baby in the Keene area. And every place is on a pretty long wait list and unclear when she will get in. And the irony of ironies is, of course, we're working together on putting together cohort-based support for home-based childcare in the region. And all of the none of the entrepreneurs that she's been working with have space. And she's like, don't I get to jump the line somehow, some way? But no, it's the classic. So I've decided that maybe I'm going to have a subspecialty in this. This is, I've been doing some successive maternity leave coverage, and they've all extended beyond their original date because new parents don't have a place to put their child.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late. My last meeting ran a few minutes over, so I appreciate you just having a conversation until I could hop on. Thank you very much. We have a pretty straightforward agenda today, and I hope Sean will be able to hop on. If he can't, I can talk a little bit about what he was going to talk about. Amy, do you want to give us an update on the workforce pipeline and where you are with that? If there's any help that you might need with that? Did you get the modular?
Well, okay, so we still have the 11, a group of 6 and a group of 5 on 2 different days. The group of 6 is ahead by 2 or 3 weeks. They are actually embedded in the classrooms at CCUV right now. They're able to go in and spend lengths of time under direct supervision of their because all their criminal checks are back for New Hampshire, but they are still working under direct supervision of either a mentor teacher in the classroom or ECEA staff. And reportedly from the mentors, very helpful in the classroom, and showing more and more knowledge of intentional use of language and placing themselves. A couple of weeks ago, we had talked about supervision, observation, and interactions and what the differences are and where to really place yourself physically in a room so that you have good sight of children, and they're starting to demonstrate these things and put them into practice. And the only thing holding up the sub pool right now is basically getting everything loaded in the system. So as soon as that happens, they will be on site subbing throughout the Upper Valley. 6 will be loaded in there. The first 6 will be first, and then when we feel the next 5 are ready, they will be right behind them. The modular. So we were told that we did not have to have a to scale perfect parking lot model, and then we were told we did. But I have a friend who owns a landscaping company, and as soon as they're back from vacation, I'm going to have them come do the scale map, which is really not that huge of a lift. We're able to do like tie downs, and ADA ramp was not a problem. Added some cost, but not too much. And then the other thing they needed was some sort of an energy efficiency summary or level. And the company in Massachusetts had actually never heard of that, which I thought interesting. I figured Massachusetts would have it if anyone did. So hopefully we'll be able to meet the standard for Lebanon. And now, and then the other hurdle we have to do is to get the fire chief to approve it without a sprinkler system. We have to have a sprinkler system. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what to do, which is kind of, it's too bad. I mean, we're finding people and space is an issue, and maybe we can come together and figure out this space solution. We are right now, they're in a very cramped room. There's really no more than 6 people, adults, and the trainer can be in that room. You can't fit 11, 12 adults in there comfortably with a trainer. And we're also taking up space for 9 infants in that room. So she's licensed to have 9 infants. It's like 2 rooms, like 2 small rooms together. She's licensed for 9 in that room, but doesn't have the staff. If even this program produced 3 staff, that could be moved around. So they had qualified people in there. It could open 9 infant slots. Allison's like, poop, but not in the right area. You need it in Keene, but I mean, we just need to get out of the space. So that's where
I've worked a lot with Lebanon with facilities, and they follow code very particularly. Particularly is my word of the day. I guess I was going to say it again. ADA compliance is massive. Our experience was when I became superintendent, we had a new middle school that was built before I came on, And I didn't know until 5 years in that we didn't have a certificate of occupancy. So I had to go back to the original architects and everybody. It took me a year. We had to regrade the front parking lot of the middle school 3 times because over the 5 years it had sunk with the weather and it wasn't to the degree specified for ADA. They had asked us to build a multi-million-dollar ramp, which we didn't have funding to do. We had to go through Boston. With our current projects, Dwayne, who's one of the people at the fire department in Lebanon, has been great to work with. Lots of questions in regard to access, and lots of questions in regard to particular codes. And David Brooks at the city, who's now the deputy manager, he was my go-to for the longest time, but now he doesn't necessarily oversee that. I think the same people are there, but got shifted around. So I think that's going to be a process because I've had that firsthand experience. The other thing is the center that you're referencing, it's not too far from this SAU office, right? Is it right up the street?
We actually have spaces within a mile, but you really you need to be on site, like to Fidelity to do this program. You can't get in a car and drive 5 minutes to get to observe. It just doesn't, it really won't work that way. And so we've got to just be, there's space within the building and other places, like there's two preschool classrooms that are really large are not actually maxed out to the licensed space. So we could steal space within there. But again, we're taking away licensed childcare space to do this program. That's kind of not what we wanted to do. If they had full staff and they put a wall in, they could actually add another group of 12. But yeah, in that really big classroom on the left, Michael, when you're going down, they could, if they had a wall there and another door and access to the bathrooms, somehow they could actually split that and get more kids. Because by in licensing, even if you had enough people, you only have a max number of children in a room. You can't have, like, even if you have enough staff, you can't like fill a gymnasium with 3-year-olds. If you have enough staff, you have to have walls. So that's what we're trying to figure out. So we'll have to.
Amy, this may seem like a weird solution, and it's certainly less than ideal pedagogy. But if I'm understanding correctly, you want to be able to bring this group of 11 plus a trainer together on site. And the limitation is you don't have a space big enough to do that for adults. And any of the spaces that you have are big enough, or even if the spaces that you are using, you're obstructing. Is there any office space, closet space, et cetera, that you could divide them into like groups of 3 and do it by Zoom? I know it's not the ideal training, but that's what we've done. That's what we did when we had to socially distance, as we were all on the same site, but there were smaller pods because we didn't have enough room that we could put all of us socially distanced. So we did it via Zoom, but everybody was in the same place and we could kind of come together for smaller groups and stuff. And it worked. I mean, it's less than ideal. Obviously, the interaction would be better if you could all be in one space, but if there are smaller little spaces where pods of them could be distributed and doing it by Zoom, that might be an interim best of worst. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, like something that would work.
The interim best of worst is being in the space that we're in. The other, like one of the far out options I didn't think we'd have to go to is to actually go up. The new addition part is actually 1 floor. So I was thinking, these are adults, so you can go up. And they do have a teacher room, but then there goes the teacher room. That was the whole point. Like they get planning time at this center, they get lunch, they get time off, they go to have a quiet space that's all their own, and we'd be basically taking that over. So we're trying not to punish them for doing what they're doing. We didn't think we would have this much trouble, but yeah, we've actually asked the neighbors. We had started out like, could we ask the neighbors if they have space, like they'd want to rent? Can we, walk across the lawn? And that isn't possible at this time. We've gone to realtors. We looked across the street, because across the street is not the best case scenario, but it's better than getting in a car. So we'll see when it comes to. And I found, Joanne, we actually got approval from David Brooks and actually the new person that took his place, we did not have to have that map to scale. Like, they don't make people do it. Like, you don't have to have like it all drawn out or whatever. We had it drawn out like over a Google. We had a Google measured, blah, blah, blah. I had everything put in according to, the required, size. And then it went to the board. And the board said, you have to have it to scale. You have to have it like exactly drawn like a regular map, like an expensive drawing. And even though they said you didn't have to, the board said you did. So I was like, well, we need to get that certificate of occupancy before we even order this thing. Because if we order it and then we can't even get in it, it's kind of a waste of money. So that's where we are. But they're going into a sub pool. We're still going.
Right.
And then we're going to Claremont after that.
That's great. If there's ways that I can help at all, please let me know, because I work with that group a lot and have found that they really do try to make things happen. Perhaps even giving Sean a call to say, here's where we are. Can you help us out? He might be able to push things forward, because he's done that for me too. It's been helpful that way. Speaking of Sean, there was progress on what we talk about with the legislation that he put forward. So it's gone through the first committee and we'll be heading to a second committee, which is fantastic news, because there was uncertainty if that would even get through. So it definitely seems as though there's that interest in ECE work. As far as progress with the facility, I'm not 100% in the loop with that. I believe he's at the point where he's working with the architects to design the facility. I know he had somebody that he was getting on board, and they are talking with the Boys and Girls Club, Chris, and organizing and developing that. So there's a lot of people working on that project. We mentioned, and I wanted to mention it here, at one of the meetings, having Sean and Chris do a bit of a presentation overview of the ECE facility. Although we've talked about it a lot here, some people were surprised when they read about it in the newspaper, and some questions came back up. So there will be a meeting with ECE educators April 3rd, 6 p.m. I sent it out on the listserv so people can attend virtually. If you happen to live in Lebanon and want to attend in person, that's an option as well. I asked about childcare. That's not something that they will be providing, because they're doing the virtual option for people. So they're thinking it's probably going to run about an hour. And I started a Google document with questions, because they're asking that questions be asked in advance. That way it'll be a more productive and efficient meeting. So that document got sent out. I will resend it again, because I know everyone gets very busy. So I figured, I'm looking at my calendar, I'll probably send it out again on the 27th on a Monday. That gives people a week advance to be like, oh, right, I should ask some questions if I'm going to attend in a week. So we will be sending that out as well. In regard to other business, I just wanted people to know that Amy and I had a conversation with Jackie Furman, who's NACE, N-H-A-E-Y. How does she pronounce it?
It's New Hampshire AEYC.
Yeah.
But she combined it when she called it like
NACE. It's
NACI,
NACI, which is the national AEYC.
got it. Thank you. Amy kind of percolated this concept of that organization kind of being the lead for all of New Hampshire, because we don't really have a group to do that. And it seems as though that's potentially Jackie's vision as well. So that could be pretty exciting, because you would have one organization that would be championing ECE specifically. And I'm learning and listening and hearing that there are organizations that have ECE as a priority, but they also have their hands in lots of other things as well. It would be an organization kind of connecting with the DOE and DHHS to say, how are we supporting people getting into the field? What's the legislation coming down? What's the funding that's out there? And it going kind of to one place where perhaps next year or so, instead of these pockets happening, they could be the point people. And I think that would be really beneficial. Jackie has a ton of experience in lots of different areas, which is pretty cool. And is very passionate about this work, which is great. So it's just an idea out there, but I could see Vital Community is just going to potentially end at some point. This EC initiative was originally a 3-year, although it might get extended a bit, but like lifting Jackie would therefore be lifting Vital Communities in doing the work that we wanted to do from kind of the beginning. So I don't know, we'll see how that goes, but it's kind of an exciting thought.
How is
kind
that
of-
getting funded right now, Joanne? Because I sort of, I know that there's been,
There's funding in there. She has.
yeah, it's sort of been up and down. And I know last I checked, and this could be that Jackie's actually officing out of Maine because she's
Right.
covering both Maine and New Hampshire's AYEC.
Yeah, the Couch is one of the foundations that's supporting that work. There's others.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So right now, Jackie is being funded by the Couch Family Foundation, the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and Granite United Way. Now, Granite United Way is specifically funding her to do some work with family childcare in the Southeast Coast. So she's doing more programmatic work, you know, with them. And then her work with Couch and Charitable is more around doing this sort of broader needs assessment to understand how can we relaunch and rebuild the AEYC presence in New Hampshire. So there used to be a chapter in New Hampshire that went away for reasons that I'm not completely clear. It kind of was before my time, but this idea of how can we rebuild that presence in New Hampshire. I will say a couple things to your comments, Joanne. I think this issue that there really is no organizational structure right now. I mean, she is basically a program of the main AEYC, and they're supporting her, and they're the fiscal sponsor for the funding. So I think there needs to be some thought about what would it take to sort of rebuild that organizational structure in New Hampshire. And then, you know, Jackie on her own is not going to be able to sort of build the chapter as sort of the voice of providers. There's going to be some other additional capacity needs there. And I don't think there's really been any conversations about that yet, but in terms of a long-term vision, I think you're spot on and what's needed in New Hampshire. And I think the New Hampshire AEYC could be uniquely positioned to lead that work and to be the voice of providers. But you know, what the timeline is for that is really murky to me anyway.
So is it fair to say that right now there are two kind of functioning network of providers that are geographically specific? So there's the Upper Valley one and there's the Coos County one. Are there other networks of providers that are operational? I mean, Amy, you're saying yes. Michael, you're saying, I don't know.
I don't, it depends on what you mean by a network of providers. I mean, there are, the regional coalitions include provider voice, and some people might say they function as networks. On the southeast coast, there are some kind of networks, but not really formal networks, at least as I would describe them. But I'd be interested in how you see that, Amy. Maybe you see it differently.
Oh, Amy.
Oh. All right, just put
Let's
it in
see how
chat.
good we are at reading lips. Right?
I don't know, is it working now?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, I just got this thing that said your microphone isn't working. I mean, I really, like I said earlier in the meeting, I really would like to see a place, like, I really felt that I was getting excited that, the Council for Thriving Children was going to take this spot. And then things kind of went to PDG regions, and then it's kind of all over the place, but none of it is really specific to early childhood. Everything is sort of comprehensive. It's, even the Alliance, you have coalitions that represent children and families and healthcare and everything. Everybody's there. There's not this like birth to 5 focus that really just represents this voice and can accept money and distribute funds, which is also a challenge. UNH does a lot of the, not just the fund distribution, but also the guiding those funds and not necessarily fully informed about what's going on and what is needed. And the PDG region leads are in the same position. They are not functioning child care centers. They're coming up with ideas that are great, but they're not really hitting the root issues. And I just kind of imagined maybe, and I had asked Jackie, that question. I'm like, do you foresee being a 501c3 and being able to accept funds and being able to do contract work for the state, much like Vermont AUIC does? Vermont does the apprenticeship program like it should. Like, they're the people that know this. They also do some of the teacher award system. They got the contract for that. They actually, I believe, got the contract to distribute funds for paying off loans. And that's where it should be. Like, it should be done. If the state can't do it in their own early childhood focused department, then another entity that is focused solely on this should. And then even the fiscal costs at New Hampshire AUIC could go to their conference. It could go to getting bigger and better conference speakers and things like that. And I just always thought, I see Vermont doing it, Maine's doing it. It just seems like New Hampshire it seems like a way to connect. It's a good connection.
Well, it's such a repository for resources is sort of, I mean, yes. And that they have, that the chapters have the connection to the national stuff, which the national stuff is doing a lot of heavy lifting that is very, very helpful and could be easily kind of imported and tweaked. Like I think about this, what the Vermont folks have been talking about. I can't remember what the language is, but it's the kind of universal standards for teacher credentialing, right? So that lead teacher means the same across all states and stuff like that. And so it just feels like to me that the AEYC could be a really meaningful addition. And as you point out, and because Maine and Vermont, and like I presume that the Massachusetts one of the things I don't quite understand, it's a chapter organization. Is it a membership organization in most states? So the providers themselves belong, and is some of its funding through fees that the providers
do
pay. So that I think could be its own set of challenges is, could we waive fees or do something like that in order to broaden the membership and get all of the voices at the table? And or it sounds like that, like, if they can contract with the state, it also sounds like that they have alternate revenue streams besides just membership dues, so that the membership dues don't have to cover the cost of everything, right?
Well, and, incidentally, that's my word of the day. The credentialing system for early childhood requires you to be a member of a professional organization. So who do you pick as your chapter? Vermont, like your money is going to different affiliates anyway. Like I've been a Vermont affiliate. I don't even, for my credential and for my own professional development, I maintain a membership with NEYC with Vermont as the affiliate. And because I have that, I get to get into the Vermont conferences at a discounted rate, that type of thing. You get to access resources at the membership rate. So it's not just, like Jackie had said this morning, it's not just about memberships. And I agree. I think that if you build it, they will come. If you build an organization that provides them with, the professional, culture or the professional, environment they need, like which it does. The standards are recognized, across the board everywhere. And EY standards bring, NEYC accreditation brings you right up to step 3 automatically in out of 4 steps in the GSQ for New Hampshire. So it has some weight, and it can do, I think they could get it back. I really do. I think they could get it back. I was jaded by New Hampshire AEYC, and I left a long time ago, went to Vermont. So they do get the fees back to them.
What I see happening is we're going to be drafting our goals for next year in May, because then people go away for the summer. And so one of the goals I'd like to see come out of this group potentially is the support of this idea. We can find funding. We have people who will fund it maybe for the first year or so, along with other programs that will fund it, that will help build it. But then the key word of the day is sustainability. So once that gets up and running, what is Jackie's thoughts in regard to being sustainable as an organization and to keep things going? We have people who'd be happy to fund presenters and things like that. It's a conversation about kind of what's Jackie's vision and what does she need to use us for. And we here at Vital Communities in this organization can do that kind of support work and get it up and going. And I think that's really something major that's missing in New Hampshire that could help with the certifications. It will help with the pipeline. It will help with the workforce, because it's also providing PD. There's lots of reasons why it would connect well with this group, and also connecting with Vermont, because I know we're by state, but we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. And getting people around the table and saying, this is what Vermont did, this is what's happening in Maine, what can we have happen in New Hampshire, potentially having regional meetings along the lines of New Hampshire School Administrators Association, where we almost all belong to it. And they have monthly meetings where we all get together and have those meetings. But then we have a regional, like Southwesters meetings, because not everything that's happening at Concord's happening in Leb. So, however Jackie's vision is, but it might be that she's the major organization that's the fountain of information. Hey, here's the legislation. Then it goes back to the smaller regions. They talk about what's happening, but getting everybody on the same page is so important right now, because people are working in silos and everyone's working really hard, but it's not united in conversation. We've tried hard here in our initiative to use the same language as Vermont and New Hampshire. A bunch of us were at an advocacy meeting and we're writing the proclamation that will go out, and we're really funneling in on these key data points and this key information that we're going to keep using to lobby. So we need that group to exist in order to push EC forward in New Hampshire, kind of doing what Michael's talked about several times, is like, when's it actually going to happen? we're talking about it, but when's that legislation? When's that voice that's like a Let's Grow Kids-ish kind of thing going to happen in New Hampshire? And I think that we can make that one of our goals and ask Jackie, what are the action steps?
How does it intersect? And this is one of the things that I guess, like, I think everybody seems to have this in their head, and maybe somebody's actually done it, but like, I haven't actually ever seen an ecosystem map of the resources and organizations. So like, just like, okay, there are these regional coalitions and there are these, and I start to wonder if one of the obstacles or barriers to kind of getting the AYEC going again is that there are a lot of overlapping circles, but there are sort of missing parts too to the overlapping circles. So like, I'm thinking like, what does early childhood educate? What is the Early Learning New Hampshire group? Like, how would that intersect with this? They have different missions, but that's, I think, also part of the thing that's happened in New Hampshire is that these smaller initiatives have grown up just like ours, right? And now they have a presence and a footprint and a set of tasks that they're doing. So how do we kind of, I don't know, channel people toward a more coherent set of structures where the roles and responsibilities for each group are kind of more delineated, and that there's not unintentional competition, when in fact what it could be is an overlapping set of cooperative entities that each have a piece of the puzzle, right?
That's what's missing, right? That's the whole silo kind of perspective and the reinventing the wheel. I want to note that Amy's leaving at 1:30 today, and she wants to say the other thing we can give to this work is a strong board members. So that's the other thing, having very diverse people on the board, with early educators as a key voice, because from my limited work in the field, sometimes the early educator voices are missing, and they're the ones who have the most information, whether it's how the legislation is being written. And they're not, then Vermont is doing a lot of tweaks to their legislation now because they realized, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, like, oh, we didn't think that this was going to have this impact. And having, diversity throughout New Hampshire, north, south, east, west, is going to be really important. This will decrease competition, as you described, because that might be out there, because it's a unified, specific ECE. What are we going to do in New Hampshire effort? And I think that if we talk about kind of the Venn diagram and what might be missing, I think what's missing is one organization that's heading it, where people can go to get their resources, that's leading the efforts, and where everyone has a seat at the table. So you have your regionals, and then they all come together. One question, what does PDG stand for, a PDG region?
Preschool Development Grant.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But so what would Early Learning New Hampshire say is their mission? Because I think, what would Jackie Cowell say to this? Would she not say that this is a direct competitor, what they're trying to do? Isn't this what they purport to do? No. Okay, Amy, what would she say that they do?
So they've been kind of put their shared services network builder.
Okay.
I'm not Jackie, but from my understanding, working as their shared services network builder, they're they don't have lobbying power. They're more like a grassroots advocacy coordinator.
Okay.
Bringing the people with the issue in and bringing the people that tend to that issue together, but they're not necessarily going to stand out in front and make a change. So like when we were still at 10 in a room, 10 people in a room way back in 2020, they would kind of field the complaints and tell people like, here's the people you contact, but they didn't get out front and make the change. And actually there were 3 providers, myself and Chrissy Mint and Mimi O'Connor from Elliott Hospital Child Care Center that actually met with the governor's staff and to make the change. He had no idea we were still at 10 in a row. And that's because the people that we were being connected with, I asked directly for them to turn their chair around and talk to the governor, and they said no. So we need someone who can step up to the governor's staff and say, this is what's happening in the world, because that was obvious during the pandemic that the voice of the providers and the governor weren't, that they weren't hearing. The governor's team was not hearing what was happening, because we didn't have that kind of level of advocacy and those connections to get the word out. So like Jackie and I were talking about in the meeting, the center-based rules and the family-based rules in New Hampshire are mixed together in a book. People have been doing this 40 years. The family childcare providers have no idea really what the rules are. They are so, I have no idea what the rules are myself. They're so intermingled and like hyphen and like dash and star note if you're a family provider this. So actually we put in our homegrown grant to do that work, but that's not our work. That's the work of a central early childhood advocacy group to make the state pull those rules out and pay for it themselves. Why do we have to do that work and pay for it? So that's the voice we're looking for. We're looking for a much stronger, the early learning New Hampshire is more about shared services, cost savings. They do want to connect with, and hear the voices, but the power of what you can do with those voices is not being, they don't have that, they're not in that place to move it forward.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you named that. So what I'm seeing, so thank you. That was very helpful to me to understand that was the, and to also understand what Early Learning New Hampshire really sees as their kind of patch of this problem.
You have to talk to Jackie to see what Early Learning New Hampshire sees, because I'm coming from this side, not from
I
Jackie.
I understand. And she may have a different, but what I'm thinking about is that very helpful graphic on the homegrown organization. I don't know if you guys have looked at it, but it's this very helpful graphic that exactly names the need for a hub organization that would just describe what you just, so I don't know if you've seen that, Joanne, but like it might be a good tool for us to be thinking about. I mean, this was specifically with home-based or New Hampshire language family-based childcare centers in mind, but it is, I think, equally relevant here because it does talk about
that one. I'd love to see it. I'm not here, so if you send it to the group, that'd be great. Thank you. And
so
Amy mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I'm gonna disagree with Amy slightly, and I'm gonna say that in my sense is that Early Learning New Hampshire would see themselves as playing this role. I think that's how they would want to see themselves. Now, whether they are positioned to play that lead role is a whole nother question. And whether they have the staff and the skill sets and all of that to do the work is a whole nother question. But I would suspect that if a decision was made to sort of rally around New Hampshire AEYC as the voice of providers and the voice of the ECE sector, that Early Learning New Hampshire would see that as a threat. I think and again, that's just me sitting in all these meetings over the past 2 years. That's sort of my assumption. I think so that'll have to be managed, right? And so, however that's managed, I don't know, but those are some of the tensions and the dynamics that exist within the advocacy ecosystem in New Hampshire. I think the other issue with AEYC that might be interesting is that in some states, AEYCs are more focused on kind of programmatic work, right? So like, how do we build up the workforce? How do we do this advancing the profession work? How do we, right? And then in some states, they do more advocacy work. I think part of what Jackie is trying to understand is, what do providers want, right? So right now she's trying to understand what do providers in New Hampshire feel like they need. And I think, you know, she'll have to take some direction from that, and then also some direction from, you know, her funders who will be able to influence in one way or the other what direction this will go, just by the fact of the kinds of grants that are made to support the work. So I think all that needs to be kind of worked out and understood a little bit better. The other piece of this too is that I guess I always, and not to put you on the spot, Amy, but I always thought, what role could the ECEA play in this as a provider network? And yes, currently regionally aligned, but much further along than AEYC in terms of your 501c3 status, the fact that you have a board, the fact that you have sustainable funding, the fact that you have programming in the community. I like, not that the ECEA should take on that role per se, but what role could the ECEA play a role in helping to support New Hampshire AEYC, given the fact that there is no existing organizational structure for them currently in New Hampshire? So I think there are a lot of opportunities on the table, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And rather than, I think, diving into one idea and then pushing it, we need to have a conversation with a broader range of statewide stakeholders who are actually engaged in this work.
Right, that's why I proposed it as a bigger goal. So when we start, what I'm doing now in the spring is I'm capturing kind of big ideas, something that we can actually do that's actionable, because we started off in August without the charter, without goals, kind of like who's on first, and everyone was going their own way. But we know there's this gap, right? There's this black hole in New Hampshire. And so it might not just be Jackie's work, it might be a combination, but where does Vital Communities initiative fit in? I think is talking with these groups with a product, we hope at the end of next year that it's going to live somewhere. It's got to go somewhere, whether it's a mixed group of organizations. The other thing that's really important is the organization has to live on its own without being pulled by the direction of the sponsors. And so it's a slippery slope to have people sponsor it, but then they want to see certain things come out of it, when at the granular level, it's really about early childhood educators and what do they need, and what do they envision in their field happening. And there needs to be a voice that does all of the parts that everyone's mentioned here, that make sure it keeps going forward. So I'm pretty excited about the fact that she's made such great progress, and is coming from a place of wanting to be neutral and not wanting to push people having to pay to be part of it, but more so getting the voices around the table. But it's just something that is starting to percolate, have conversations about, and because it does involve certification, it does involve workforce, I just wanted to mention it, and we'll see where she heads, because she's just brainstorming out loud.
I would say that I will just add my echo to Michael's piece about, and this is a little confusing. So there's Jackie Cowell, who is the ED for Early Learning New Hampshire, and then there's Jackie Furman. So I always have to say make sure I've got my Jackies correct. But I would say that an earlier conversation with Jackie Cowell to understand how she imagines Early Learning New Hampshire would be in order before Vital Communities started promoting one organization or another, just so that we understand the lay of the land and what we might be engaging.
So where is early learning in New Hampshire, and why aren't they part of like all of the stuff that I'm involved in, and yet the other names are popping up? What do they do? Because I
Well, they're
have,
in this, they're on the sea, so physically they're located on the sea coast, in the seacoast area.
okay,
And Amy is right that the major programmatic elements that they have are really around the shared services network idea, that they have the early childhood, what's it called, Amy? Statewide Education Learning Alliance or something like that, SELA, SELA. I can't remember what it stands for, but it is the idea that they can buy in bulk. It's basically, you know, a shared, it's an alliance to allow them purchasing power. Thank you, State Early Learning Alliance. And they also then have these other kind of programmatic supports. And I think that are basically around, as far as I can tell, they've been a lot around the business viability and the business supports. I don't think that they've really delved into the professional development on the learning pedagogy and the classroom and what happens in that and all of that. I don't know their origin, but they are very connected with the Community Loan Fund, and some of the work that the Community Loan Fund has done on the seacoast. I think that, you know, my own sort of digging around has revealed that they are really center-oriented, center-based, care-oriented, and very they don't have a lot of eyes on or insight into the more rural parts of this state. And I don't think they've ever really delved into the Upper Valley in any meaningful way. I think that they've been piloting and all this kind of stuff. So although it is supposed to be statewide, I don't think that they've had a huge amount of success, but I do see them pop up in these conversations in certain places. And I think, and Amy can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they have been poised and have been working with UNH and SBDC and a couple of others to try to put together a big grant application, or a big application, when and if the state ever gets its act together and releases an RFP for the ARPA funds that are held hostage, whatever that $29 million is, or whatever that is still. I think that the RFP was supposed to come out in December. I don't know if it's come out yet. Amy, you put together your logic model and have everything ready to go for that. But I think early learning had been kind of focused on trying to get a big chunk of that money.
thank you. I appreciate that. With that information, I can do some more research in those areas too. So thank you. It wasn't a name that popped into my head. So that explains why. So I didn't mean to take us on a different direction, but I do think that from all the conversations, it does need to land somewhere, wherever that lands. If it's a mixed group idea, or if it's one centralized organization, there's just that need that's out there that we're going to try to work with people to figure out. Any other business for this meeting today people wanted to raise? Would it be helpful to have me ask Jackie Cowell to see if she could attend one of our meetings to hear about what she does directly, to have an understanding, since we talked so much about early learning New Hampshire? It's also a way for me to network with her and to know that we're out here and an opening to, talk with us about what's going on in the Upper Valley. Jesse?
I just wanted to mention, Jackie did attend the facilities group back in the spring at least one time. I know when it was when Andrew was still facilitating, and when the sort of initial meeting, bringing providers together, over the summer to talk about the new Lebanon Center was being kind of proposed and developed. And she, you know, I remember her speaking up to say like, oh, let's hear what the existing providers say about this, or if anyone's interested. So
Right.
she certainly attended at least once or twice and is aware of Vital Communities work. So just to note that history.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know that. It seems timely though, if she could come and have a conversation with this group in the spring, to kind of understand what the focus is on without bringing in NACI at all, but just more so what are they focusing on and what's their vision? Because we could definitely support their work too. I mean, the more people, organizations we can support, the better. That's really what we're about as a group. Great. Any other comments or business?
I'll just add that we heard last week that Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation did acquire the building for the new Randolph Center in Randolph, Vermont. So they closed on the building, I believe on the 7th. So that first phase of that project is now complete, and they have the unenviable task of raising a couple $1 million to actually do the renovations. So
I think they have that money now, because I can report another piece of the Vermont puzzle, which is there was a congressionally directed spending grant that finally came through. Like, you know, they talked to Leahy's office more than a year ago or whatever, and that grant came through. They've still, it's now going to be managed by HUD. I don't know if you guys are experienced with congressionally directed funding, but it gets parked with whatever federal agency is kind of the most appropriate. So the grant is actually to Let's Grow Kids, but it's for a bundle of projects. It's a $10 million directed spending. It's a big chunk of money. 3 of the projects are construction or expansion related, and I think there are a total of 5 projects, 3 of which are construction related, and 2 of which one's workforce related and one's something else. I can't remember, but the 3 construction, one of them is the Randolph piece. I don't know if they got the full 2 million, but they got a big chunk of change.
Awesome.
So that's exciting for everybody.
That is exciting. The city of Lebanon is also seeking through Custer a HUD grant, which could be up to 3 million. The due date for that is Tuesday. And I know that Sarah was getting in touch with Sarah Jackson, wrote a letter, but also was getting in touch with a few other people that said that through Rebecca Owens, that their letters will get to them by the end of the day today, so that they met the requirement for the number of letters needed in support of their HUD work, or not HUD work, but support of Custer's HUD program. That would be huge if they could get several million to support their facility. So that's a little bit, I know, on the New Hampshire side. And then Amy, the other day, what was it that you were accepting letters for, that you were pushing forward, that the letters got to you? What did you apply for?
Yeah, we applied for a small amount compared to that congressional spending for next year to set up a training site in Claremont with Jean Shaheen's office, with Dartmouth Health as the fiscal.
So a lot of great work coming together, which is wonderful to hear. I'm so happy. Damien did email and say he couldn't be here today because he was attending a meeting regarding funding. So he's probably having that conversation and can fill us in at the next meeting. Speaking of that, our next meeting is Monday, March 27th. If you can believe that, end of March already. I hope everyone enjoys the snow. We're supposed to get a couple inches tonight and up to 8 inches tomorrow here. So it's going to be coming down. I'm hoping it's going to be one of the last ones, but never know. And hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Appreciate it. Take care.
see ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.